So, um, this last Friday I ended up going 3-1 with Prank Kids. Now, why am I going and pointing out a tournament recap of locals with Prank Kids? Well, the only reason I'm actually doing this today is because the new promos came out. The new tin promos, and I wanted to see how this deck goes and faces against them. Obviously, the first week, not every deck will have them, but I'm actually going to be following up with this next week to see how it ends up running. But since I ended up going 3-1 with this deck, I wanted to go ahead and give you a tournament recap to point out why these promos mean absolutely nothing to this deck. So round 1, I end up facing against Guru Control. Guru Control is very, very bad against playing against playing the level 11, so I didn't actually expect him to run it because it wasn't going to be very good because they rely on one monster, and that's Guru. So I was not worried about it, so I actually sided in Denko and Red Reboot, in which I ended up drawing 2 Red Reboot and a Denko in Game 2. After Game 1, I just completely slaughtered him and proceeded to have no problem with what my opponent was playing. Round 2 was actually my loss, where it was an entire 1 minute for the round for me. I opened up all monsters. I knew my opponent was playing Mermail because he is a local player and I know who he is. So he summoned Atlantean Prince and I passed. Or I set my monster and he passed. He summoned Atlantean Prince and I just scooped it up from there because I had no way to continue my play. Game 2, I ended up drawing the Field Spell, Instant Fusion, and a couple of other cards that were really useless, but it was mainly just cards that were extenders for this deck, and the only way to get it to a Prank Kid card was the Field Spell, which was Prank Kid's Place, and he Ash Blossomed that. So it was an entire 1 minute. I did account for the side decking because we both agreed not to side deck because he said there was no side deck for me. Even though he could run Dark Ruler no more, he was playing Sekka's Mermail, so, I didn't go and shoot him down about that. But he ended up going into the finals, but going into my tournament record, I ended up facing against, what was it? True Draco. True Draco has literally no matchup against this deck, as he summoned Inspector Border set 2 or set 3 and passed. I normal summoned I summoned my Washer, I activated my Field Spell, summoned Washer, beat him over the head with it, normal summoned a Prank Kid, and went from there. And he had no recourse to it. Game 2 was a little bit more grindy. Game 1 was very grindy. It actually lasted us about 37 minutes. We had 3 minutes left for the round. It took me 2 minutes to side because I have no idea what to side against True Draco. I normally would do Red Reboot, but it was 3 minutes in, so Red Reboot was kind of out. So I decided just to keep the 2 Denkos in, but I really contemplated the Red Reboot. And he decided to go first. He went through his first minute, and he passed to me with about 10 seconds to spare. I activate Polymerization, and he said, "You got it." And then round 4, I ended up facing against Pendulum, which he's played against me before. He actually regrets playing against me because he knows I'm very skilled with this deck. And he said, "If I face against you, I'm going to be super pissed." And, well, he did. And, it wasn't that hard. Game 1, I ended up summoning Butler when he Pendulum summoned and he scooped. Game 2, I ended up summoning Butler. And he managed to make another board, but I made Washer right after that. Or he summoned a Purple Poison, and I just beat over the Purple Poison for game. So realistically, the deck, all in all, is running as well as possible. Yes, the new side deck cards for combo decks are definitely relevant and would be really good to play against if you were playing like Strikers or any type of slower deck like Altergeist that doesn't really matter about losing your monster, but more about being able to control what your opponent is doing. And this deck can handle that pretty well because, like I ended up pointing out before, there is a 4-summon combo for this deck, and I needed to prove that these new tin promos meant nothing. And honestly, I do gotta say, these tins are beautiful. These tins are just amazingly beautiful. But realistically, I think that this deck is really, really good in what it does. It creates multiple negations if you need it. It can create multiple disruptions. And if need be, it can push through an opponent's board with minimal to no recourse for what you're playing. Yes, there are some times where you're going to run out of resources, but you have multiple ways to recur them, mainly off of plan and pranks. But other than that, you can go and play through most of this deck pretty well. Especially against the true Draco player. He understood how plan worked after I did it the first time, so he tried to avoid it. And after I kept summoning monsters that can't be destroyed by battle and card effects, and then during my turn, just creating Roaster and just blowing him out, he realized that he can't go out of his way to go and waste all of his pieces on trying to remove my monsters. He has to try and get around my monsters without destroying them or beating them by card effects. And even though he would normally have a way to go and stop me, which for most decks would be very impactful, something like Skill Drain or the new Monarchs Erupt, or not new, but Monarchs Erupt, those are very strong cards, but they don't do anything against this deck. Realistically, this deck can handle pretty much any deck of the format as long as you're skilled enough to play it. But as a recap, like I said, this deck is doing really well against the promos. Obviously, the 4-summon combo is basically your bread and butter going first in Game 2. However, if you aren't going to go first in Game 2, if you're going first in Game 1, do not worry about the tin promos. They normally are just running Dark Ruler No More in the main deck, and that's just because it stops the Thunder Dragon or Dragon Link decks pretty well. So Dark Ruler No More means pretty much nothing to you because you can find ways to avoid it, such as Washer, where you can just, if they Dark Ruler No More you while you're playing your normal Bow Wow, Toad, and what was it? And Abyss Dweller board, you just, instead of summoning the Toad and Dweller in attack position, just do it in defense position. They will Dark Ruler No More you, but you will still get their graveyard effects, and the Dweller will be able to resolve. And the Bow Wow would be fine because you can just standby phase, recycle, and then from there you should be good because they're going to Dark Ruler No More you for that Toad. And then you activate Pandemonium, summon the Washer, trigger the Washer, summon the 2, and then you're good. Obviously, this deck can handle most other decks, but as a recourse, I just want to say, don't give up on this deck just because the 10 promos came out. It can do a lot, and with enough practice, I feel like this would be another great contender for the meta again. This is Prank Kid Duelist, and I hope you have a wonderful day.